it's just one of those things. It just, you have a moment of weakness, but you have to then just remind yourself that actually you've made it this far, so there's not going to be a problem. Welcome back to my channel. This video hopefully will turn out okay. I have tried to film a video about imposter syndrome for quite a while now, and every time I sit down to film, I'm either talking for way too long, I get really tired so I start slurring my words, or something just goes wrong and then I'm unable to get this video finished basically. So hopefully if you're seeing this now, it means it worked. I've managed to get one that works. So a little while ago, a video popped up on my dashboard. It was entitled The Imposter Syndrome Tag. This one was actually answered by Melissa M. Fry, so I'll put the video down below and you can find the original, I think, from her video in her description box. And it got me thinking, while I'm not doing the tag myself, at least right now anyway, the topic of imposter syndrome, especially for creatives and writers, is something that I've always kind of felt very interested in, very intrigued by. And in a lot of ways, I've also kind of dealt with it in my own way as well over the past few years, especially. And I just thought it was a very interesting topic. It's something that like I said, I've always been very intrigued by it. So I think I'll always kind of keep tabs on it and how it affects other people. And so I like to sort of see other people share their own stories on how they deal with imposter syndrome, what it feels like and such and so forth. So I think for this video, at the moment for 2020, I thought I would just briefly discuss a few pointers that I have experienced and felt dealing with both imposter syndrome and self-doubt as a writer, and then also share how that kind of affects my work and what I also happen to do to try and circumvent all the issues that I have as a result of having imposter syndrome. So, imposter syndrome isn't necessarily limited to just creative people. It's something that affects everybody on various levels in various situations, whether it's with work or with family, with friends, with your hobbies, as well as creative things. It can really impact your life in a very negative way. It's that annoying voice that you get from self-doubt that continuously tells you, oh, you're not good at this, you're not going to be able to do that, what makes you think you should go into your manager's office and ask for a promotion, what makes you think that you should go back to school, all that kind of stuff. Also, my dog is concerned about the people in the hallway, so you may hear her growling. It's those annoying voices that kind of stop you from pursuing certain things. And then you find yourself at a later stage going, oh, damn it, I'm full of regret. I wish I had done this. I wish I'd done that. And I hate that feeling. And I'm sure most people absolutely hate that feeling as well. I absolutely hate it. But there were certain questions that popped up with that tag video that really got me thinking. And two of those particular questions kind of floated around the idea of self-inserts, which is the notion of how much of yourself do you then put into your work? How much do you really inject the notion of art imitates life into your works? And the other question was something that kind of dealt with the whole idea of believing that people actually like your work and that you might actually be good at what you're doing. And again, so imposter syndrome for writers, that's probably one of the biggest pointers. You don't believe that you're good at what you're doing. You don't believe that you're good as a writer, and therefore you've been sitting on a manuscript for so long, or like a bunch of essays or articles, you just don't feel like anybody out there in the world would ever come across your work and think that it's good, when in actual fact, it might actually be really good. So I wanted to kind of answer those a little bit and just kind of see where it goes. Like I said, this whole video is just, it's been stressing me out. It's also unscripted, so I might just be going all over the place and just going into various loops and not really coming back for ages and whatnot. So just bear that in mind as you go through. But God, yeah, imposter syndrome is super annoying. But as far as self-inserts are concerned, okay. I don't like to insert myself too much into my fictional work. unless it's a superficial thing. So a lot of my favorite characters that I've written about so far, which I haven't published yet, are usually people of color. For example, with the One with Witches series, there's 3 books, but 2 of them are going to be headed by 2 women of color, while the third one won't be. The first 2 books, the first book is headed by Sienna Wormwood. She is based very loosely on what I look like to a degree. Although I've made her skin a little bit lighter so that it's a bit more obvious that she's mixed raced. But she comes from a family where they're mostly black, and even on her grandmother's side, her grandmother being a lovely white lady, she married a black guy, and thus her mother ended up being mixed race, and then she grew up and then married a black guy, and so you get this amalgamation of this wonderful this wonderful woman who happens to be 3/4 black and only 1/4 white, which is basically what I am. I wanted to base my characters on that sort of notion because of the fact that growing up, as much as I loved reading and as much as I grew up with a lot of classic stories, I wanted to read more contemporary works that had characters that looked like me, who weren't in superficial or stereotypical or cliched roles. Those were the things that I always kept coming across, and I knew that as a writer, or at least wanting to become a writer later on, I wanted to try and circumvent all of those issues that I was consistently fighting within contemporary works. I also wanted to, I guess, give a voice to characters of colour because, like I said, there's so much put into stereotype. There's this whole cliche thing as well where if you ever read a book about a black character, 9 times out of 10, they're a victim of something, they're in servitude somewhere, or it's about slavery, or that's basically it. There's no other stories that black characters can actually tell. At the same time, you also get a massive concoction of writers who claim that they aren't racist or ignorant and whatever. And so out of the copious amounts of books, they'll publish like the one book where the white protagonist, which is usually a male guy, his girlfriend happens to be a woman of colour. And 9 times out of 10, that character is always denoted to the stereotypical notion that his partner happens to be of Asian descent, she's really good looking, she has long black hair, and that's it. All they've done is just glorify and exemplify Orientalism and exoticism to like a massive degree, and then they use that as a kind of like, well, I'm not racist because I have that one Asian character in my book. And it's like, well, okay, well, that's you didn't go into her hereditary or her heritage or how that affects her as a character or her work or anything like that. You've literally just placed her there for the sake of placing her there as like this character that just needs to be there for the sake of diversity. And knowing full well, there's a particular author who does this, so I'm trying really hard not to mention him because he's also one of my favourite authors, but he fails on this so hard. I don't like that. I don't like the Orientalism. I don't like the exotification and otherness of characters of colour. I don't want the stereotypes and the cliches so much. So when it comes to self-inserts, I like to try and circumvent all of that by saying, actually, you can have a book with characters of colour present who can also do the regular things that all the regular normal characters are also doing as well. You can have a book that can be diverse. It doesn't have to feel like you're forcing diversity down someone's throat, but at the same time, you can be really creative and really expansive with your work and just produce something that's really amazing, and the characters just happen to be there and they just happen to be people of colour. So I think one of my favourite series is, which isn't really anything to do with self-inserts, but it kind of lays into the idea of seeing myself, sort of seeing representation, as it were, and thus absolutely loving the series as a whole, is The Expanse by James S.A. Corey. That series of books is incredible. The TV series is also amazing. Check it out. It's on Amazon Prime. But that whole series of books is absolutely fantastic. Oh my God, they're so well written. They're really immersive. You're just in space. It's just so technically correct as well, scientifically correct. But one of the main strong characters, there's like a whole group of strong characters, like there's 4 in particular who work together. But one of those characters is a character by the name of Naomi Nagata, and she's of Nigerian descent. And it's mentioned throughout the series, but it's such a defining and positive quality about who she is. There's like a lot of discussion about the multiple degrees that she has, the jobs that she ends up having or doing or has done in the past as a result of the studying that she's done. It's like, it's all written in such a way where it's like you can just praise her for being a hard worker and you can just praise her for being who she is. But then for someone like me, you can also praise her because she happens to be a character of color. And like I said, representation matters. So it's just an incredibly fun series and I do highly recommend it. And because it's so well received by so many people, I want to be able to continue feeling inspired by a series like that and write the urban fantasies that I do in a very similar vein. I want people to pick up those books and feel comfortable reading them. The aspect of imposter syndrome that affects me, besides the fact that I need to circumvent all of that cultural issues that we have with the publishing world at the moment, is knowing that that is going to be a huge project, and that kind of terrifies me a little bit. It terrifies me, which is why I don't really like discussing the book series so much. I don't really like discussing my characters so much, because not only do I get worried about how other people are going to feel when they see, for example, like a character aesthetic, like this one here. If they see an aesthetic like that, would somebody who doesn't look like me think, oh yeah, like they seem like a really interesting character, I'm gonna want to definitely read a story that involves them? Not really. And it's partly based on the fact that people like me were just kind of mostly sort of like pushed to the side, or we were given awards because, you know, there's a quota to fulfill. But at the same time, it's like, I don't want to put it out there because I really don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable either, like by forcing them to read books that aren't about characters or people that look like them and deal with issues that they deal with on a daily basis. Like the idea of, you know, like an Asian character having problems deciding whether they should go for career or move to this other city and then get back with their ex and then settle down and have a life. Like, that's such a normal thing for people of color to deal with. But again, we don't see those stories, and it's really difficult to then feel confident in the notion that we should actually sit down and write stories like that. But one way I have to sort of circumvent that, in addition, is the fact that I have stories to tell. Unfortunately, the stories that I have to tell do contain a lot of characters of colour. I have a whole diverse group of people. And it's not even just the colour thing. It's everything from like gay characters, characters who are just not of this world, you name it. I just want there to be like a huge possibility where people can always find aspects of themselves throughout the books that I want to tell. But even though there are days where I feel like I don't want to write because I feel like, what is the point? I then have to remind myself that nobody else is going to write the stories that I'm going to write. So I need to write them regardless of how I feel. So emotionally, the self-doubt is just consistently always there picking away at me. But at the same time, I'm also in a position where I have to kind of just push through it and just persevere, try and get through that pain and just keep going and just hope for the best, basically. I don't want to sound pretentious or anything, but if I were to publish traditionally, I wouldn't really share a lot of my work with the world. And that kind of feeds into the second question that I found quite interesting, which was the idea of people actually turning around and actually being quite receptive and positive about the work that I put out. Because again, I have so much self-doubt already about just the characterization of my characters and what they're going to look like and how I'm going to describe them without it feeling like I'm forcing any kind of like social justice aspects down people's throats. I guess I just want people to enjoy the books that I write, which is kind of strange because then you also have to think about the fact that people might actually enjoy the books that I write, and people are not that bad. Readers aren't that bad. I mean, the publishing industry is kind of scary and isn't really open to people like me so much. So I'm fully aware of the fact that even if I do try to go traditional, like I said, I'd like to go traditional for at least a year and see how that works. I'm very much in a space where I understand that 95% of my efforts, if I do PitMad or if I send things in like traditionally, like through the mail or email or whatever, 95% of the time I know I'm going to get an absolute rejection. But if I happen to come across that 5% that say, okay, give us your first few chapters, we'll let you know what we think. again, I'm still not going to be in a position where I'm going to be like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Oh my God, I can't wait. I'm going to be like, just sitting there like grinding my teeth, because I'm going to be like, they're just going to say no. They're just going to say no. They're literally going to say no unless they have a quota to fill and I've got to them at the right time. If it's purely for quota, then fine. At least I published. But, see, this is what I mean. Like, I second guess myself an awful lot. I second guess myself. And then when I second guess myself, I then put myself down. And then that's where the self-doubt decides that it's going to start creeping in and the imposter syndrome comes in. And it's just like, yeah, you might as well just give up. There's no reason. There's no point in you writing the books that you do. You should just stop. No one's going to care. No one's going to like them. Plus, it's urban fantasy, and it's an urban fantasy series about a bunch of witches. Those are two areas that really do not sell well at the moment. So again, there's no reason for you to go in there and do anything about it. It just sucks. It really sucks, because the imposter syndrome is also not entirely me. It's also societal issues that I also have to take on. And I shouldn't, because obviously most writers who are already well established always say, don't write for audiences, don't write for other people, write for yourself. Just write, edit later, and then you can start releasing it out to the various audiences that you want to try and impress or try and feed with your work and stuff. Just write it for yourself. Screw what the whole world is thinking or what they're doing. Screw what the publishing industry is doing at the moment. But at the same time, it's like, but I can't, because it's just me. I'm just one person compared to like a massive conglomerate of groups of people who work to publish, people who work in various book clubs to help get books on bestseller lists and stuff like that. They all look the same. So it's difficult when it's just me, one lone writer, versus this wall of people. It's scary. That's the only way I can put it. It's just really scary. It's very terrifying, and it just kind of helps to eat away at my own confidence and stuff. Whew, I'm struggling to get through this video. Gosh, I knew it, but I'm going to keep going. Let's just see what happens. Okay, so the fact that people might actually like my work and people might actually be receptive and actually be positive is something that, based off of past experience, is a very convoluted thing, because while I post and talk about my poetry quite a bit, especially over on Instagram, most people don't really read poetry. And I think I take comfort in that. I take comfort in the fact that most people don't read poetry. They find it difficult to understand. They find it difficult to really appreciate. And because people aren't really willing to sit and read poetry and leave comments about it or talk about it or discuss poetry, it means that I can post my poetry without feeling any kind of pressure of knowing that somebody might come along and have something really extremely negative to say. And that's where also with the idea of self-inserts, I tend to find that I put a lot more of myself into my poetry than I do into my fictional or non-fictional like essays and works and stuff like that. I put a lot more effort into my poetry because I know that 99% of the time it's just going to go ignored. And so I like that. I like knowing that I'm doing it for myself. And if anybody just happens to come across it and they just happen to like it, then for me that's like extra icing on the cake. That's an extra cherry and I feel really good. But because of how rare that is, like I said, I take comfort in knowing that I'm being ignored in that sense. So I'll keep posting my poetry here and over on my Instagram because of the fact that people just won't care. They won't really care at all. Whereas my fictional work is really, it's really difficult because I put so much love and so much work and so much effort into it, just like my poetry. But I feel like I should guard my fictional work a lot more because people prefer fiction over poetry. So the idea of putting out chapters and things out into the world, like onto my website and stuff, which I haven't done because I'm following a certain traditional rule, is terrifying to me, because I know that people will have more to say about a chapter than they will about a poem, because poems are just kind of like, in their most basic form, they are just one gigantic metaphor and a massive hint at things. And unless you're in the know, you're not really going to know what's going on. Unless it's like modern poetry, like contemporary poetry, then everything's just kind of laid out. Like they tell everything. They don't really show, they just tell. So it's difficult. And I put so much love and sweat and tears into my fictional stuff. And I do get a little bit kind of apprehensive, but also extremely nervous about the fact that somebody might actually read it like read a chapter or something and they might actually turn around and say, oh my God, no, this is really good. And that's something that's actually happened recently. So the last time that anybody ever read anything from book 1 of the Wormwood Witches series was back in like 2017, 2016. I don't quite remember what time of year it was. I'd already worked on previous chapters already, but the prologue came to me as a dream. And I woke up at 3 in the morning, started working on it. And I was so excited about it and so passionate about it. It was amazing. Before I knew it, my alarm was going off. I had to get up and go to work. But I was so excited about that whole prologue for that whole day that when I bumped into one of my colleagues who I had the chance of working with, he was a very straight talking sort of person. He's very honest. It's just kind of how we are in Britain. If we don't like something, we'll let you know. And I asked him to read it and tell me what he thinks. I was expecting him to be extremely negative about it, but he was surprisingly extremely happy and very excited about it. He was like, oh my God, if you got any more chapters, I'd love to read more. And I didn't have anything with me at the time. And I was like, no, I didn't. But you liked it. And he was like, yeah, this is absolutely amazing. This is a very promising story. That was the last time that I actually showed anybody anything from that book series. Since then, in the last year and a bit, I've asked close friends if they would like to read a chapter or two of like some of the later later chapters or the prologue and such. And no one got back to me. Everybody ignored me because they all needed me to help them with something. But when it came to me asking them to help me with something, they were suddenly too busy or they didn't see the message or whatever. And instead of confronting them about it and telling them that it might have hurt my feelings, I would just internalize it and then just say, well, there's obviously a reason why they don't think that I'm good at writing or whatever, so I won't send them any of my chapters. And it sucks. It's a horrible feeling to have, but that's the kind of thoughts that I have in my mind quite often about my work. So the other day, and by the other day I mean like, I think it was about 2 weeks ago now, oh my God, I basically had a little rant and a little vent on Twitter. And I was like, yeah, I've sent stuff to friends and nobody got back to me, blah, blah, blah. But 3 complete strangers who happened to be part of my network got in contact and they were like, yeah, we're more than happy to read what you've put out, or at least what you've written so far. So just send them to us and then we'll give you some feedback. It was very, very professional, which was really awesome. And I sent them all the prologue and chapter 1, and the feedback that I got from each one. Mind you, I don't think they know each other, so it was even better as far as like professional feedback was concerned. But the feedback that I got was incredibly positive, and it was actually quite overwhelming. I did cry a little bit. I was so happy. I was like, oh my God, what? I've only edited these pieces like 1,000 times. But it kind of got me back on track and made me feel really positive about my book again. And yeah, that's part of the reason why I just kind of don't talk about the books. And I struggle to talk about the books, especially on my channel. I struggle because I'm so worried about what other people are going to think and how people are going to feel, that it really does hinder my work sometimes. There are days where I'm really positive and everything's going really well and I'm really passionate and I can write copious amounts, like 5,000, 6,000 words, like in one whole day, like in one sitting, or I can even go as far as like 10,000 sometimes, which to me is like dissertation level. And I feel really positive, but then after a while, I just get this nagging feeling. Like I said, like, is there really any point for having my story out there in the world? And then I just don't write again for weeks at a time. It's really bizarre. It just kind of hits me, kind of like waves. It kind of just ebbs and flows, the passion. But it's always there, and I'm always working on my stuff, but little bits at a time, because obviously I don't ever want to stop writing this novel. I would like to get it finished so I can finish the other 2 that I've already started. But sometimes I just have to give in to the imposter syndrome. I just don't think that I'm good enough to write the books that I'm writing. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get them published traditionally. But like I said, there's no hope in, there's nothing wrong with trying, or at least hoping that I could one day be published traditionally. And that again feeds into the whole notion, which I mentioned very briefly earlier, about the fact that I won't share my chapters like on my website and stuff, because one of the rules that I did come across, which kind of sucks, but it also makes sense, because if it didn't exist, then I think I would have gotten a lot more feedback and I probably would have finished all 3 books by now. But one of the rules is that if you're being published traditionally, most publishing houses don't like when you're putting out early chapters of your work, especially when you haven't actually finished the manuscript, because in their head, it's like, what do you need us to market your book for if you're basically doing it all yourself? We're not going to sign you. So I would like I said, I would like to get published traditionally, so I can't share chapters with anybody, and I'm very selective about what amounts of information about my stories that I will share with the world, because obviously I want to keep the majority of the story a nice secret project, and then I can just surprise the world with all 3 novels when they're completely done. So there's ethical reasons, there's ethnic reasons, there's societal reasons why my imposter syndrome can be so bad and sometimes debilitating at times. But there's also the personal issues and the confidence issues that I have in general. And it's just something that I'm gonna have to just battle with for a very long time. One thing that most creatives just have to learn to accept is that you probably do have a really good work, and you probably are a very good writer, an artist, or whatever. You're probably very good at it. And I mean, I've seen some crap out there. I've seen some serious crap, but if those particular things that I would consider to be absolute crap are being loved by so many people, then what makes you think that your work won't be loved by people as well? It's just one of those things. You have a moment of weakness, but you have to then just remind yourself that actually you've made it this far, so there's not going to be a problem. But I don't know. It's just one of those things. Imposter syndrome is such a big subject. I would like to retouch on it maybe later on, or maybe do like an annual check-in or something. I don't know, but yeah, that's my whole video. I guess it's just gonna be one video for now because it's just way too long. But thank you so much for watching and spending time listening to my words and stuff. If you also have the same feelings, please let me know. Again, put them down in the comments section. I mean, no one really comments on my videos anyway, so again, I feel free doing these videos because no one really watches. But if you want to do the tag, like I said, the tag video that I saw is located down below in the description box, so please go check it out. Do the tag. If you do it, let me know so I can come and see your video too. It's just a very interesting subject, like I said, so I'm gonna let you guys go. Yeah, I think that's everything. I have other news that I want to share, but I'm probably going to put that in another video because so much has happened and is happening right now that I'm extremely excited about, and it's stuff that I've never really done before, so I'm terrified and stuff, so I'll just wait and put them in another vlog in the end instead. Yeah, okay, all right, bye.